Stuck in Vermont, brought to you by 7 Days and sponsored by Vermont Tourism and Hotel Vermont. My name's Ava Solberger. We're here in downtown Burlington. Last week was Vermont Design Week, and in honor of that, we are going to have a look at something that we see every day, but don't always really examine. Today we're going to take a sign tour in downtown Burlington and find out what signs have to tell us about the history of our town.
Image of Upper Church Street, probably in the 1930s, 1940s. First of all, there were cars on Church Street, which is a radical change. This used to be really an urban downtown area with lots of traffic, lots of commotion. The retailers needed big signs to catch people's eyes. It wasn't uncommon for the eye doctor to have a big pair of eyeglasses on their sign. Now, these visual cues that are kind of universal.
Is that graffiti or is that
No, that's an old sign. And it's a hand pointing, saying, like, right down here.
I just love discovering little things or pointing out things that we take for granted every day. Like I tell some of my friends, like, look up when you walk down Church Street.
All the way up there. Yeah.
You can ask my wife, and she'll tell you that it is very annoying to go anywhere with a typographer because everything is up for scrutiny and criticism. The job of the sign is to, one, capture your attention.
At the most basic level, they're just communicating information. You know, what's there? How do you find it? How do you get inside?
The work is largely invisible. But if it's done well, there is a sense in which it should be invisible.
Historic signs, when you have a current use and you can see the sign from the previous uses, it tells you the layers of history.
I think it's really interesting when you look at some of the later 19th century, early 20th century signs. They were really incorporated into the building. They were permanent, carved into the building, almost became an architectural element of the building itself.
The mid-19th century was sort of the wild, wild west of typography.
The building was built in 1902. So across the cornice of the building, it says U.S. Post Office and Customs House. When it transferred into ownership of the county, there was a lot of confusion. The Chittenden County Superior Court sign is down at eye level. That's what people look at today.
They chose a very standard sort of serif font that harkens back to ancient Rome, actually. And you'll see the Trajan font everywhere in every movie poster.
The Nectar sign was originally installed in 1960 for another restaurant and lounge that was here called the High Hats. Nectar's, they kept the same sign, but they redid the neon lettering. You come down the hill into Burlington, it's one of the first things you see at night. Neon was used a lot in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. It was just a sign of the times. We were embracing everything modern in our culture.
That lettering is a casual script. Every sort of lettering imaginable was already there in the late 19th century, except the casual script.
Flynn Theater, built in the 30s, is a perfect example of the Art Deco style, which was the prevailing architectural style of that era.
The funny thing about Deco is that if you open any history of graphic design, Deco is really just a footnote. It came on the heels of the Great Depression, right? And so the 30s graphically was a time to try to sort of ignore that was happening and to have something opulent, great strong symmetry and geometry.
The Wilson Hotel sign is another great example of a survivor. It's a visual landmark in this neighborhood.
This is a sign that we just take for granted today. What's interesting is that this one was the first of its kind in the state of Vermont. 1950s was a time to modernize and update your old buildings. This was cutting edge in the 50s. Is essentially a mashup of a couple different buildings dating from different eras. Samuel Huntington owned a bookstore at this location from 1837 to 1888. Eventually he sold it to Patrick McAuliffe. The stained glass underneath the blue awning, so it's just sort of a clever way to preserve the historic signage that's there. A really nice example of layers of history.
This is kind of a mess. Graphic design-wise, it's very in line with what happened on the heels of the Industrial Revolution. If you look at the new signage, it's all done in this nice, clean Helvetica that came out in the 50s and ushered in the Swiss design style. This idea that we had to clear out all the clutter and all the crap.
So this is the Lunig's building today, one of the great gathering spots in the city. And what's really interesting is that there's actually an 1830s federal-style brick building underneath what we see today. In the 1930s and 1940s, the owner of the building, Hyman Abraham, hired local architect Louis Newton to update and modernize the building. Today, across the top of the building, it says Lunig's. For many decades, it said Abraham's. That vinyl panel can be removed. There's no permanent harm done to the original signage that remains intact underneath.
Behind us here is the Weller Building. It was built in 1889, and what I love about this building is that it was built by a woman. She didn't physically build it, but she financed the construction of it, Mary Weller.
So the Camera Center sign is another survivor. It fits right in with the era in which the whole Lunig's Abraham's building was modernized and updated.
So this was a music store. They cleverly put a record sign.
So in the 1930s and the Depression, there was a great movement to modernize Main Street. Here we see just a glimpse of some Carrera glass that probably the whole facade from the 1940s, what was the Kelly Pharmacy, may remain intact underneath this paneling.
You guys just found a new sign.
Yeah.
We just discovered a new sign.
Before.
See, a good reason why we all have to remember to look up.
Yeah.
You can see Unita Biscuit underneath, but you need a biscuit. And they were made right on College Street. And you can see Burlington Savings Bank, which was the same bank that put up the first time temperature clock in the state. So we're seeing lots of layers of advertisements on the side of this building.
This building has a small plaque that looks like a needlepoint. It's because this building was a Singer sewing machine store. Most people never even probably notice it. Bove's Cafe, one of the iconic eating spots in Burlington, and recently closed down. Opened in the 1940s at one of two remaining Carrera glass facades. This was a key part of the whole Italian neighborhood that used to be here.
We're usually kind of focused at eye level, so just kind of taking in the broader picture of our built environment and discovering new things that we might not have seen before.
It just helps inform our understanding of the history of this community.
Let's take an old-fashioned walk. Let's have an old-fashioned talk. We will walk any place you choose to. But let's talk about the things we used to. If you want a novelty in outdoor pastime, something for the real blasé. It's an old-fashioned walk and an old-fashioned talk with an old-fashioned girl someday.
So next time you're out walking, look up. There's a lot of layers and history behind the signs that are all around us. We'll get Stuck in Vermont for you again real soon. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and sign up for our weekly newsletter and subscribe to our videos.
This is high def, right? So you can see all my pores,
I can.
blemishes,
Not right now though, because it's really
stray
sunny.
hairs. Oh, okay.
Did you tell them about Neon's death? I didn't know about
Neon is dying.
that. Yeah.
If a design student showed this to me, I'd say this is horrible.